Hey, welcome back. So I just finished this piece in Procreate and I figured I would walk you through my process. So here I am sketching away. I had this image in my head of this fox looking up this tree, and the fox and the tree trunk are like sprouting with flowers and foliage. And here I am hopping into color with no real plan in place. And in hindsight, I really wish that I did some color thumbnails so that this process was a little bit more linear and straightforward. And I am like hacking away at this tree trunk texture, and it's really easy for me to get lost in texture. It's just testing out different techniques. And now I'm starting to think about how I want this to be lit. I'm not totally sure yet, and I am messing around with the background like over and over again, just repainting it until I find something that I feel pretty okay with. I'm still not sure though. And I am currently working deep in the background, trying to figure out how I want the leaves and the trees and the branches to look from a distance. I'm painting up some bushes to make the forest feel a little bit more lush. And it's kind of hard to see, but I am getting lost painting in the dimension of those bushes. I am referencing Studio Ghibli foliage because Studio Ghibli is basically my holy grail of foliage references. And you'll see me adjust the values a bit of many different things in this process. The bushes, the background, the trees, because I'm not completely sold on the composition quite yet. And now I'm having my first go at the grass, which I wasn't really satisfied with. I just threw a little bit of lighting on it and decided I would come back to it later and then switch gears to the fox, which was one of my favorite parts. So to allow myself a little bit of flexibility, I didn't want to commit to a specific lighting treatment yet for the fox, so I pretty much treated the shadows like it was overcast lighting. And I decided to zoom in here because I am absolutely going in on those fur textures. I love painting fur, y'all. I basically take a lighter color and paint strokes in the direction that the fur is going. And then I take a darker shadow color and define those clumps to make them really pop. And then I will add some highlights on the fur to add even more definition. Just a side note, I did not realize that you had to set up your video export preferences in Procreate before you started drawing on your canvas, so this did not export in the greatest quality. But I just wanted to reassure you that my next time lapse will be way better quality. So now I decided, okay, I want the background to be dark and the foreground to be lit up like a spotlight. So I repainted the foreground, started painting light on the tree, and it was like coming together in my head finally. So here I am painting up my initial idea of this foliage growing up the tree trunk and wrap around the tail, which I do away with this later because I decided it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But regardless, I was having a blast painting these leaf shapes. I was just basically layering lighter leaf shapes on top of the darker leaf shapes, spattering in some leaf stamp brushes, and then adding some flowers on top. And then after adding some flowers on her shoulder and wrapping some vines around her arms, I added a trail of foliage going up the tree, and I would add flowers on that too. And for the foliage, I was mixing like warm and cool shades of green to really make it feel nice and vibrant. So here's actually where I did away with the whole idea of the foliage wrapping around the tail. As pretty as it looked, it just didn't really make a lot of sense because it made it seem like she was trapped or ensnared, which is not what I was going for. So essentially, I just repurposed that layer and blended it into the tree trunk under the fox, and then just painted the tail on top of it, added some vines and flowers to make it look really nice. And this piece is actually inspired by the clarity as an artist I've been feeling lately. I feel like I have been finally leaning into the kind of art that I feel like I'm meant to make. And it's represented by this upward blooming path of growth. And here I am hand painting the grass instead of using a stamp brush because I think it gives a really nice organic feel. And I had a lot of fun painting these rocks here because, again, I'm referencing Studio Ghibli screenshots for virtually all of my environment elements. They really helped me understand how to layer down the bumpy textures and how to paint the little divots and the grooves and the little cracks. And here I'm starting to knock back that blue a bit in the background and bring in more of the green to unify it all. And here I am starting to detail the roots, and this part took me quite a while because I spent a lot of time really zoomed in painting in this wooden texture detail, and every time I would zoom back out, it was just too detailed and too noisy, and that's a bad habit that I still have to break. It took me a bit, but I did reach a point where the texture on the roots felt more balanced with the texture on the rest of the tree. So with an overlay layer, I brought in that warmth to the tree trunk, and I decided I wanted the lighting to come in as this burst of sun rays, so I started adding highlights on the edge of the fox's fur. Procreate's smudge tool is really good about making things like that look nice and soft. It's a little hard to see here because the values in the background are so dark, but I am adding the tree leaves in near the tops of the trees, as well as adding patches of moss on the main tree trunk. And here I'm using an airbrush to paint in the sun rays with the blend mode set to add to make it nice and bright. And to add a bit of magic, I put in those little dust specks in those sun rays to make it nice and sparkly. I did some final color adjustments in Photoshop, and here are some detailed close-ups. Thanks for watching! I hope you found this somewhat interesting, and I will see you next time.